I do have a couple of requests, so I think I'll jump in with one now. I like the one, and I forget the title, but you do it often, and it's a good one. It's about the dead poet in the living room.
Oh, it's called Posthumous Irony. But the poet's dead body was discovered in the living room. Let's repeat with proper emphasis. The poet's dead body was discovered in the living room. Too bad the irony had to be lost on him. The poet would have appreciated it if he were living. But so long as he were living, there could be no discovery of the poet's dead body in the living room, and that particular irony would not be, at least not yet. The reason a poet writes is to leave something behind, and though we know that what we leave behind will in its turn leave us behind, a poet can transcend this inevitability to some small extent. That is what I am attempting here. That is why I'm leaving a copy of this poem in the living room, just in case. I'll be damned if I'm simply going to lie back and let perfectly good irony be lost on me.
Dark humor.
Yeah.
Do you, I mean, I know poets generally get dark humor. Do you think a sort of mainstream audience understands dark humor?
Well, we hope so. I think so. I think humor has taken a lot of dark turns. It's hard to differentiate even poetry with stand-up comedy sometimes. I mean, there's so much dark humor out there in stand-up comedy also. And there's so many comics who have been poetic that, I mean, certainly George Carlin comes to mind. But there's a lot. And I mean, you're playing with words. It's all a matter of you know, what you're doing with the language, and you know, and different subtopics, and also very often it's a matter of finding a butt to the joke, someone who can be the butt of the joke and not offend too many people. So I think we're always treading that line of, you know, oh, maybe some people will take offense to this, and you know, you kind of have to judge the audience or decide what audience you're writing to.
We both use humor in our poems, and we know poets that have used humor. Amy Laub uses it very well. Eileen uses it. Why does humor work so well with an audience?
Well, I just think that humor, when you get a laugh is the most obvious reaction you can get to anything. You can say something very profound, and you might hear that silence that you get when they get something that's deep. But that reaction is more subtle than the reaction to a humorous line, and you know, if the laughter comes at the right spot, that's, you know, you feel that right away. So I think that's an easy reaction to read. But as you've often said, you also have to walk that line between, you don't want to be pigeonholed as a humor poet. I mean, otherwise people will always be expecting that of you, and if you give them something other than humor, they'll either be disappointed or they won't know how to take it.
As far as humor goes, that's so characteristic of all human beings. After all, babies laugh at 3 months old when they can't do almost anything else. Humor is something people like to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was a kindergarten teacher, and it was so easy to get children to laugh. They love to laugh. And we don't, even the people who are in their 90s still like to laugh. That's something, just part of being a human being.
Yeah, that's
and it
true.
works.
Give an example, read an example of something that you feel really worked as a humorous piece for you. Now, I know you got a lot of choices, but
one that I think worked is the near-death experience. So, you've been near death and survived. Congratulations. Did you see the bright light? Feel the rush along the narrow passageway? Recognize the faces of departed loved ones as you approached? Did you notice the expressions on those faces? Overhear one mutter, "Oh shit, he's coming." Get the sensation that you weren't being pulled back to life, but pushed back from death. Your departed loved ones had to act fast in order to save your life, or rather to postpone your death, in order to buy themselves some time to find a better hiding place.
When you write a humorous poem, is it easier to tell if it's working as opposed to something that's not humorous?
I think it's easier to tell, because if they're not laughing at the right spots, you know it. And if it's not a humorous piece, let's face it, people in an audience are going to try to figure out where the end of the poem is and clap. And a lot of times you get the feeling that that's all that's going on, that's the sum total of their reaction. And sometimes you can't tell that it's not. You know, sometimes the applause is a little warmer, and sometimes you don't really know why. But when they laugh, you know why they're laughing. So.
And sometimes I've seen you read certain poems to one group and it's uproarious, and other groups almost
Yes.
no reaction.
Yeah.
So it's not always predictable, and you've said that sometimes it could have to do with the way you delivered the lines, where you paused, where you didn't pause. There's a lot to humor. Or what came before, or what came after.
There's also a lot of interaction among the audience, I think, when it comes to humor. If somebody starts laughing, it'll be contagious. Not everybody may get the joke immediately. It might take, there might be a delay in it sinking in. But if the first person who starts to laugh, then people will start to get, oh, that's a laughing point. Oh yeah, that was funny. Then their laughter is kind of an agreement with the first person.
I wanted to talk to you about is the Philadelphia Writers Conference. We've been going together now for 3 years. You've walked away with a lot of awards in both poetry and fiction. How do you feel that has, or has it had any effect on your? But were you surprised at
it was
winning?
I'm always.
Is one better than the other? Are you more glad you won poetry than non-poetry, or is it just as satisfying to?
I think it's just as satisfying because poetry has become so spread out and so ill-defined anymore that your poetry kind of blends into your prose, I think. That's the way I find it. I find myself putting a lot of the same poetic sorts of ideas, trying to put them into my prose, and I think it works, especially with short pieces. And short pieces are basically what we're submitting at the Writers' Conference. So, but it's all very gratifying. I mean, to be recognized, to have one of your pieces recognized is a wonderful feeling. And a big part of it is picking what you want to submit. And Connie's been a big help with that.
It's difficult.
Yeah, it is. Because there are pieces that you fall in love with that you really shouldn't fall in love with.
Speaking of the prose, there was a piece that Connie and I were mentioning earlier, and if you have that.
I just happen to have that.
This is where we get a sample of your prose as well.
This is one I submitted a couple of years ago, and it's called A Proper Fit. As soon as I tried it on, I knew the problem wasn't that the suit didn't fit me properly. It was that I did not fit properly into the suit, which was precisely proportioned for the man who had everything in the proper places. The suit tried its best to get me to conform, but it was no use. In the full-length three-way mirror, I saw the suit sigh. However, the two-dimensional salesman in the mirror smiled and said, "Not bad," with a commercial tinge of optimism. 100% wool with the latest slim-cut trousers. It's the last one in your size, and I can let you have it for $300 if you purchase it today. I don't know, I said dubiously, as the suit sighed once more. Just a bit of tweaking and it'll fit you like a glove, the salesman assured me, with the smile still fixed in place as he called the tailor over. What do you think, Vito? Vito approached me with tape measure in hand. He gave the suit an appraising look through his half glasses. Let's see what we have here, Vito said to the suit. After some preliminary measurements, Vito looked over his glasses at me and commanded, "Hold out your arms, please." I obeyed, and Vito went about taking measurements from shoulder to neck, and neck to shoulder, from shoulder to wrist, armpit to armpit, hip to hip, crotch to floor, floor to waist, right and left, front and rear, equipped with enough measurements to produce a replica of me, minus a head. Vito departed through black curtains to a back room. "We'll just be a few minutes," the salesman said through his smile, and followed Vito through the curtains. After a few minutes, during which the suit grudgingly tolerated my company, the salesman and Vito emerged. "Some alterations need to be made, but we can get everything fixed just fine," the salesman said, his smile wider than ever. "Vito will explain what has to be done." "You see," said Vito, removing his glasses, "your back is a little narrow. Your left shoulder is higher than your right. Your left hip juts out a bit, and your legs are rather short." I was aware my legs were short and my back was narrow, but the other details of my distorted anatomy were a revelation. "Vito can alter the garment and to accommodate you. It will cost an extra $250, but in just 5 business days, it'll fit you like a glove," the salesman said with unflagging enthusiasm. "Shall I proceed?" said Vito, brandishing a white fabric marker. The suit cringed. I held up my right hand. "I don't think so," I said, shaking my head. "It would be a shame to disfigure a perfectly good suit." I retreated to the fitting room and removed the suit, replacing it neatly on its hanger. I gave the suit a last admiring glance, and the suit seemed to sigh with relief.
Excellent. That won you first prize?
Yeah, I think it won a prize.
Well deserved.
Yeah, thank you.
Well deserved. And, you know, we talking about prose and poetry. You certainly took a poetic device, personification, and used that very effectively in that poem. Did you know you were doing that? Or did you set out to do it, or did it just
I'm not sure what I set out to do. I thought, as soon as I got that image in my head of the suit sighing, it just kind of took off from there. Like, there's usually, with a poem or with a short prose piece, there's usually like one idea that's the nugget that gets you started thinking along certain lines that are in tune with the way the piece is supposed to go, or the way at least you feel the piece is supposed to go. Don't you find that? I mean, that
I think so, yeah.
kind of sets the tone, and you kind of follow that line all through the piece.
And Vito's perfect. I mean, you know, I couldn't think of a better name than Vito.
I'm not sure that it's PC, but
I think even Vito would smile at that.